Guys. Okay, so I am making you this video to go over the assignment called Identifying the Features of a Research Article. Now, you're going to find this video in the comment section of your submission because I leave my assignments open, so I didn't want to like just blast this to the whole class. But I have to tell you that even though it's in your comment section, this is not a personal video that I've made for you. Sorry. It's more of like a how to, this is how you would solve this, this is where you would find things video. And my goal in making this is that you will go into your assignment, you'll reflect on it, you'll compare what we're doing here in the video to what you did when you were doing the assignment on your own. Because the truth is that this assignment is tricky. It is definitely one that kind of snags my students. In the past, it has. And it's because you guys are learning and reading these research articles it's got a challenge to it. There's a lot of pages, there's a lot of information, and honestly, understanding how it's all structured because it is pretty standard, give or take a little bit. Like some things are different, different researchers, different writers, things like that. But APA does try to keep things as standard as they can, essentially, even with the uniqueness of the researchers and the writers. So there is some consistency across the peer review journal articles. And that's kind of the whole point of this is being able to identify all the things that you're learning throughout your learning center. And when you're reading these articles, being able to pick it out and discern what you're reading and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to walk you through I've already highlighted and everything, so I'm just going to kind of walk you through and talk you through where to find all of this stuff. Now, if you did it differently, if you didn't come to the same conclusions as me, identifying why and then you know what I mean, kind of correcting that mindset would be really, really helpful moving forward, because then you're just going to be able to read these so much easier. Okay, let's share my screen. My cat, I warn you, my cat is with me. I have one of them with me. I have four in total, but one is with me in this room. So we might be interrupted. Just bear with me there. Okay, so I've kind of got it in student view. I came down here and I played a bit. So the first thing that it asked you to do was to highlight the hypothesis or the hypotheses and to label each one hypothesis and then to discuss what the true purpose of the article is about. So this is really cool and interesting because a research study can have more than one thing that they're studying. They can have more than one thing that they're trying to figure out. And so you can have one hypothesis or you could have multiple hypotheses. In this case, we have three. Now, I asked you in the introduction video to ignore the abstract. So even though we talk about the purpose here and you can read it and you can kind of discern what the purpose is, I did ask you to kind of avoid using the abstract and to go deeper into the study. So the abstract just gives you a little blurb about what's going on inside of the study. You get past the abstract, then you get that deeper, you're getting into the meat more. Okay. The introduction. So when you have an introduction of a peer review journal article, and you will have an introduction, it's another term for it is a literature review. And you're going to be working with literature reviews in this class. You're going to be building one. Essentially, a literature review is looking at all of the past research that has happened on this topic so far. So they're looking at research on the coronavirus, how it's impacting students who are in higher education. They're looking at anything that has been studied about academic stress or coping strategies, emotional intelligence, all of that surrounding COVID-19 and, higher education. So okay, this is research conducted by other people before us. And this is what we know about our topic right now. That's what the introduction houses. And so all of this, it has to do with the study. It does, because it's providing you a foundation and it's letting you see that there's gaps in this literature that still need to be researched. But our researchers have not conducted anything going on in the introduction. So if you used or you highlighted anything in the introduction as a hypothesis, as a measurement, as a construct, or a operational definition, then I'm so sorry. No. then no. Anything from the introduction until you get to the hypotheses is not specifically about the study. It's previous research that has happened about the topics, and it leads into our current study. So all of this is past research, and you can see, look at all the citations. They're saying, hey, this is from this person, these people researched this information, they researched this information. Globally, here's some statistics. This was researched by them, and who's ever in the footnote there. And you know what I mean? So we're going to kind of keep going. Now, typically, literature reviews are about a page, maybe 2 pages, maybe a little longer, but give or take, you know. I will hold off. I'm going to correct myself from before. I'm going to take away my no from before right here. If you highlighted academic stress as a coping strategy, or not as a coping strategy, as a construct, academic stress emerges out of experiencing stress due to factors in scholarship requirements. If you identified this as a construct and this as part of the operational definition, you'll get that point for sure because it's labeling, it's defining it here. And again, they're using past research. They're saying this operational definition is supported by this person. So you're still using past research as support, but they are saying this is a construct that we're going to be working with, and this is the operational definition. I believe, I'm going to keep going. Hold on. I've read this before, but I didn't like, here we go. There we go. Okay, so emotional intelligence is an emerging topic for educational, psychological, and management studies. Again, if you highlighted this as a construct, yay. And again, they're giving you an operational definition of emotional intelligence, what it's meaning to, how it's going to be pertaining to this study. They're talking about emotional intelligence scales used in this study. So if you were to highlight this as a measurement, they're talking about used in this study. They're talking about the scale and how it works and all that fun stuff. So a lot of that. But essentially, the literature review is mostly about providing you that foundation. So if you highlighted academic stress, if you highlighted emotional intelligence as constructs, I'm trying to see if they talked about coping strategies because I don't remember so much perception. But yeah, okay. So essentially so if you highlighted those things, you get the point. But they mention it other places in the study. So when you get down to the end of the literature review, so after the introduction, you get down to the literature review, about the last paragraph, maybe 2 paragraphs of the literature review, it switches from other people's research and it switches from that foundational input about what's already been discovered and discussed into this is what our study is about. So the last like 2 paragraphs, 1 paragraph of that introduction is going to be where your hypotheses and your purpose are stated within the study. So here we're really lucky because our authors highlight it with a heading and they're like, hey, this is the objective of our study. So the study was conducted to understand and analyze the perception of academic stress, so construct, perception of academic stress as experienced by students from higher education institutions, and coping strategies, another construct, using their emotional intelligence, another construct. And I said, hey, you know, up here I said, what is this? What's the main constructs that the article is working with? Highlight all the main constructs. And then in the comment box next to each construct, identify the operational definitions for the identified constructs. So operational definitions for these could be up here in the literature review where we find them because they're talking about the foundation of what they are. They're defining emotional intelligence here. They're defining academic stress here. But if you go deeper into the study, so bear with me, okay? We're going to go deeper, deeper, deeper into the tools used for data collection. They actually give you what the questionnaires are using to measure academic stress and emotional intelligence. So they're measuring pressures to perform. They're measuring perceptions of workload examinations. They're measuring self perceptions and time constraints and things like that. And you can use those in your operational definition as well. Same with emotional intelligence. They're highlighting awareness, empathy, self-motivation, emotional stability, managing relations. This kind of stuff can be used in the operational definition as well, because this is what they're using to measure that construct, right? So yes, operational definitions can be defined here, but they also can be defined here. So whatever you used to create your understanding, your operational definition, is up to you. And if you just wanted to highlight operational definitions, those would be the places where it's at. So constructs, operational definitions, hypotheses, right? If we keep on going. So this right here, this study is conducted. I'm going to just kind of highlight it in orange. We're going to turn it orange. So this right here is the purpose of the study. So if your purpose, like the purpose that you typed out and you said, hey, this is pretty much what they're doing, and it matches this right here, then yay, you got it. You completely understood everything. Great job. This is the purpose. I keep forgetting what I'm doing. I'm like, oh, right, I'm supposed to be, letting you guys know if you did good or you didn't. I don't know. I'm pretty sure you all did amazing. So yeah, but this would be where the purpose is, okay? And any variation, any paraphrasing of that, you got it. Then down here in green. So in green, I highlighted the hypotheses. And like I said, they had 3. So one hypothesis was to analyze the experience of academic stress experienced by students arising due to online education, to analyze coping strategies using emotional intelligence by students to overcome academic stress, and to analyze the significant effects of academic stress and emotional intelligence on students, male and female, and other background variables. Now, this is actually kind of interesting because these are the hypotheses, but in a typical study, oh, here it is. I need to charge my computer. In a typical study, a hypothesis is more like a prediction. It's going to try to predict what is going to happen at the end of the experiment. And in this case, they didn't try to really predict anything. They're just like, hey, our goal is going to be to analyze these things. We just want to analyze. We just want to analyze. We just want to analyze. We just want to understand. We're not looking to see if anything was good or bad. We aren't looking to see or make any changes. We simply want to understand. We want to analyze these experiences and how these things played out. So they're not trying to predict anything. They're just like, hey, we want to understand. And if this isn't the perfect example of basic research, right? Not actually applying it to anything. We simply want to understand. Like it's a good example of basic research right here. Let me just clear those drawings. Okay. So hypothesis, hypothesis, hypothesis. Yes, it is a little weird because they're not predicting anything, but this is essentially what they're doing within their research. Okay. And those are the things that they're focusing on. So let's see. Okay, so then the next step, so let's see, we talked about the constructs. We talked about operational definitions. We talked about so measurements are next. Okay, so measurements. Now there are a couple places where you can find measurements. One of those places is in the top of the methodology. So methodology is the section that starts off how the experiment was conducted. And this is where your researchers really need to be super transparent because this is how they did it right here. And so you can highlight a few measurements, so how they went about it. In the methodology section, they talk about the types of students that they picked out. They're from schools in India. They were pursuing graduation and post-graduation, and from higher education, like that kind of stuff. But a measurement isn't about how the participants were gathered. It's what they did to measure their constructs, right? So They mention an online questionnaire, and if you highlighted that as a measurement, cool. They measured it using a telephone discussion. So a telephone discussion was carried out by the researchers with discussing like the various ways that they adapted using their coping strategies. So they used the telephone discussion to measure the coping strategies. Then they also use, here's the tools for data collection. When we talk about the online questionnaire, right, they actually use two. They use the perceptions of academic stress scale. This is a measurement. That's a measurement. And then the emotional intelligence scale. That's also the measurement. So those were the two questionnaires that they used to assess academic stress and emotional intelligence. And then they used the phone conversation to address the coping strategies. So if you go back up to the hypothesis, right? They have a scale for the academic stress. They have a phone conversation for the coping strategies. And also they have an emotional intelligence scale to measure that emotional intelligence. So they're highlighting, like, those are the three things that they use to be able to find the three things they're really focusing on in their hypotheses, right? Then I asked you, I said, okay, so those were the things. Now, here's the thing. If you didn't put the telephone discussion as your measurement, that's okay. I totally get it. But I definitely want to make sure that you were highlighting the academic stress scale and the emotional intelligence scale. Specifically, I'm looking for those two things as the form of measurement. Okay. Now they ask you, then I ask you about reliability and I ask you about validity of these measures, right? And I want to kind of talk about that. So I wrote notes. The first thing that I was talking about is the telephone discussion, because that's a little bit kind of cool, but also kind of subjective, right? You've got a researcher or multiple researchers talking to participants. And, you know, for it to be reliable and for it to be valid, there has to be some sort of standardization. The researchers would have to have, you know, a standardized set of questions that they are asking these participants. There has to be standardization in like tone, in the way that they approach things. There has to be consistency. And I think that that can get really lost in a telephone discussion, especially with like back and forth going on. You also have a real openness for inaccuracies and bias, because when a participant is talking to a researcher, they may not be totally honest about how they actually behaved. There might be some embarrassment, there might be some shame. They might want to promote that they're actually healthier than they really are and not actually discuss what's going on. Plus, researchers are human. They have the tendency to be a little biased too. Maybe there's a little click in their voice, a little tone in the way that they're discussing things that will change or make the participant perceive that they need to change their answer to what's really true. So there's actually, it could be a little bit problematic, the telephone discussion, for multiple reasons. It may not be truly reliable and may not be truly valid. I'm really, really interested to see what you guys think and to read the way that you like approach it. I'm really excited about it, to hear what you think. I'm not being too harsh on the validity and reliability question. I want to make sure that you understand the definitions and that you can think about them like logically and rationally. But there's not so much that you can know from this study, like about if it's truly reliable or it's truly valid. What is cool about it is they do try to give you some transparency. So when they're talking about like the academic stress scale, they mentioned that there's an internal consistency reliability that had a score of 0.7. And so basically this means that there's a consistency in responses across all of the items. Now, typically in psychological statistics, and you'll remember this from your statistics class, right? The unit scale typically runs from 0 to 1. And anything that's in between about 0.8, 0.9, or 1 is considered really good and really strong. So something that's a 0.7 falls just below that, and there's some variability there that isn't as consistent as it could be. It isn't as reliable as it could be. So they do give you that information, which I think is pretty cool. And then validity, again, is it assessing what it's supposed to be assessing? And I think that based off of this, you can kind of check out the different sections, the operational definitions of it, and determine that. Again, I'm really excited to see what you think and what you say. I was really leaving this open to your thoughts and your understanding on reliability and validity. In the same manner, the EIS has also, they try to be like right there, they try to be pretty open with you on the reliability and validity. They're like, hey, split half reliability coefficient on the scale is 0.88, which is right. It's really good. That falls into the 0.8 to 1, scale. So that's really good. And they say the reliability of the content was at 0.93. So it's strongly reliable according to them. And that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? So there is some basis there that you could discuss, but mostly I'm excited to see how you guys approached it. Do you think the measurements used by the authors reflect what they hope to address in their hypotheses? Why or why not? So, like, for example, did you think that that telephone discussion could really help reflect the coping strategies? Do you think that this scale and this scale were good for assessing the academic stress and the emotional intelligence that they wanted in the hypotheses? Do you think that there's things that they could have done better? Right? Things that they could have thrown in there that would be better or stronger. So it's up to you. But essentially, this is kind of what I'm looking for. So take a moment, and I'm going to just, hold on. I'm going to be like super slow so you can pause it, okay? So in the introduction, we have the academic stress. That could be considered a construct. And it also is attached to an operational definition. So if you highlighted either one. Emotional intelligence, this is a construct. And again, if you did it up here, this could be attached to an operational definition. This is the purpose, and if you wrote out a purpose that is similar to this or paraphrasing something like this, good to go. Perceptions of academic stress, construct. Coping strategies, construct. Emotional intelligence, construct. In green were the hypotheses. Pink highlights are the measurements. Discussing the reliability and validity, we talked about that. Operational definitions for constructs are also here as well. And that's really all I asked you to focus on. So if you went beyond that and you did like the highlighted area, I was trying to like cross it out and all I could do was really highlight it. That's fine. You know what I mean? I'll check out what you did, but essentially I just wanted you to focus on the methodology up, So yeah. Okay, last but not least, APA, in-text citation. I'm going to show you what it looks like here so you can kind of assess how did you do versus the real thing, okay? So let's do this. First thing we've got going on, we're going to do a comment. We're going to do a comment, add a comment. Should pop up on the side. There we go. Okay, so first thing we have is Chandra Yamini. Yamini. I'm not good at pronouncing names, so Chandra, comma, Y, period. We only have one author, so that's what we're going to leave it with. It was published right here in 2020. I should blow this up for you a little bit. Okay, so it was published in 2020, so that's going to be our year of publication. We put that in parentheses, end it with a period. The title of our article is here, and we put that in sentence format. So what that means is online gets capitalized, online, but education during and COVID-19. So online gets capitalized because it's the first letter of a sentence. And then education during, nothing else is supposed to be capitalized. COVID is a proper noun. I mean, it's supposed to be capitalized. So that's just the way it goes. We put our colon. The capital P in perception because it's after the colon. So it's like starting a new sentence essentially. So perception, and then the rest of it is lowercase. Of academic stress and emotional intelligence. Coping strategies among college students, period. That is the title. Then we need the journal. So the title of the journal just want to make sure, see, right here. This information right here is about the journal. So I'm gonna, oh no, that's not good. We're gonna zoom this way. Da-da-da. Okay, so this right here is all of the information that you need about the journal. So we're gonna do Asian education and education and development studies, comma. We have volume 10, number 2. So volume 10, edition 2, comma. We have page numbers, or it says PP. So we have page numbers 229 through 238. And then we are going to comma, yes, and then our DOI. So again, you can choose to just put the numbers, or you can do HTTPS. There's a period after that. It's not a comma, it's a period. HTTPS, dun dun, DOI.org/10/1108/AEDS dot. That's not a dot, it's a 2020 22222297. And then you have to finish this up, okay, with punctuation. The journal article, the journal title is italicized. So Asian Education, Development Studies, and the volume number 10 are italicized. I don't think I can italicize in the comment. You can't either, so that won't be, don't worry, I won't mark you down. But that's supposed to be italicized, so there. And there you go. That's what it's supposed to look like. So good to go. All right, guys, that's it. I hope that this really does help. I hope that you can compare the two and kind of see what we're looking at there. And if you have any questions, please write it in the comment below or send me an email. I'd be so happy to help. Yay!